There is a silence only people who have been hurt by church can recognize, not the comfortable kind before Sunday service begins, but the other one, the kind that used to terrify you before it became the air you breathe. You open your Bible and the words look back like strangers. You close your eyes to pray and find yourself speaking to a ceiling with no one on the other side. And the part that hurts most, you remember when it wasn't like this. When worship made your chest feel like it might not contain what was happening inside it. When a single verse could make you feel seen all the way through. That time feels like another life. And somewhere between then and now, without a funeral, without a goodbye, the feeling left. But you stayed, faithful, dutiful, still showing up, just numb. And the question you never say out loud because you're afraid of what it reveals about you: did I break something in myself that can't be fixed? Here's what nobody tells you about church hurt. Numbness is not the wound. Numbness is what happens when a wound goes unnamed long enough. And the longer it stays unnamed, the more the static deepens until you stop experiencing it as pain and start experiencing it as personality, as just who you are now, as proof that maybe the connection was never real to begin with. And that slow, quiet progression, that is the most dangerous thing church hurt does, not the initial betrayal, what happens after. Because every day that passes without naming it is another day the distance becomes more familiar, more permanent feeling. And what starts as a wound that needs healing quietly becomes a wall you stop noticing you built. In the next few minutes, I want to show you 3 specific lies that church rejection buries in the soil of your soul. Lies so quiet and so consistent they've started feeling like facts. And then I'm going to walk you through something the Desert Fathers called the prayer of return. Not a long prayer, not an emotional performance, just a 60-second posture you can take tonight, alone in the dark if you need to, that begins to unbend what betrayal bent. Stay with me. Because the last thing I say in this video is not information, it's permission. Here is what actually happens when someone speaks in God's name and then becomes the source of your deepest pain. Your nervous system makes a connection it was never designed to make. Not consciously, you didn't choose this. Your brain in the moment of betrayal crossed 2 wires that should have remained separate: love and danger. From that point forward, every time something resembling love moves toward you, even from God, some part of you pulls back. Automatically, not because you want to, because you were trained by betrayal to protect yourself from the exact shape that love takes. Think about what that means. The defense mechanism that kept you safe during the wound is the same mechanism now standing between you and the presence you're desperate to feel again. You didn't stop wanting God. Your nervous system started protecting you from the pathway to reach Him. And here's where it gets more complicated. Spiritual receptivity, your soul's ability to receive what God is sending, is not a fixed thing. A.W. Tozer spent years writing about this. That receptivity can be increased by exercise or quietly destroyed by neglect. What he didn't fully address is what happens when the wound that destroys it comes from inside the church itself. When the people who are supposed to model the Father's love become the reason you flinch when love moves toward you, that creates a particular kind of damage. A wound inside the receiving mechanism itself. Now here is the thing that changes everything when you finally hear it. God's love never went off the air. Not for a single second since you were formed. Full signal, every frequency, uninterrupted. The station broadcasting has never changed, never faltered, never reduced its power because of what humans did to you inside a building with a cross on it. But when those people became the source of your pain, the antenna through which you were designed to receive what He sends, it got bent, not broken, bent. And a bent antenna doesn't pick up silence, it picks up static. And static, after long enough, becomes indistinguishable from silence. That is the misdiagnosis that is costing you years. Every day you live believing God withdrew is another day the signal is fully present and you cannot receive it. The tragedy isn't that He moved away. The tragedy is that you interpreted static as His absence, because no one told you what actually happened to your antenna and when and why. And misdiagnosis, no matter how painful, can be corrected. So let's name the 3 lies, because you cannot begin healing what you refuse to identify. The first lie is this: something is fundamentally wrong with me. Church rejection, especially when it comes from leadership, carries a theological weight that ordinary rejection doesn't. When the person representing God finds you lacking, some part of your mind draws the logical conclusion: if His representative rejected me, maybe He does too. This lie doesn't announce itself. It settles beneath your faith like sediment, and every moment of spiritual distance after that feels like confirmation of what you already feared. The second lie: the version of me that used to feel God was naive. The numbness has been around long enough that you've started revising your own history. That alive, open, receptive version of you, the one who actually heard something, felt something real, you've started calling that person innocent, immature, something to be quietly embarrassed about. And in doing so, you've turned the most spiritually alive period of your life into evidence of foolishness instead of what it actually was, evidence that the antenna worked once and can work again. The third lie is the most sophisticated. The distance between God and me is somehow my fault. This one sounds like humility, sounds like taking responsibility, but it is the most effective barrier to healing because it turns every spiritual discipline into penance, and penance never restores relationship. It only deepens shame. When a child is hurt inside a home, they don't stop wanting their father. They stop believing they deserve to be reached for. That's what this third lie does. It doesn't just create distance, it makes you feel like you deserve it. If you've been carrying even one of those lies, you're not broken, you're misdiagnosed. And that misdiagnosis is not your permanent address. The weight you're feeling right now isn't the weight of who you are. It is the weight of something that was done to you, wrapped in language that made it feel like a verdict. It wasn't a verdict, it was a wound. And wounds, when finally seen and named, can begin to heal. Now the practice. The Desert Fathers, the earliest Christian monks who withdrew into the Egyptian wilderness in the 3rd and 4th centuries, many of them fleeing the institutional church that had become political and corrupt, they developed a specific prayer for this condition. For souls who needed access to God that didn't require the institution that had wounded them. They called it the prayer of return, and in its simplest form, it isn't words at all. It is a posture. Here is how it works. Sit not at a desk somewhere your body can stop performing. Let your hands rest open, palms facing upward on your knees, not in desperation, not in demand, simply in availability. And then say, quietly or just in your chest, 7 words, I am here, and I'm not hiding. That is all. Not because 7 words undo years of hurt, but because every day the antenna has been bent by shame and betrayal, it bent in one specific direction, inward, closed, concealed. This 1 minute, this open-handed, undefended 60 seconds is not a claim that everything is fine or a pretense that it didn't happen. It is the beginning of bending back, 1 degree, 1 day at a time. The signal has been broadcasting since before you were born. It will be broadcasting long after every institution that wounded you turns to dust. It is not waiting for you to deserve it. It does not measure the depth of your theology or the consistency of your attendance. It broadcasts to bent antennas and closed fists and hearts that are still, even now, even after everything, reaching back. So here is the permission I promised. The silence you've been living in is not evidence of God's absence. It is evidence of a wound that rewired your reception, and wounds, when finally seen and named for what they are, begin to heal. You did not break yourself, you were broken by something, and that difference changes everything. The version of you who felt alive was not naive, it was calibrated. It was the version the Father still sees when he looks in your direction. The static was never his voice, it never was. One more thing before you go. Healing from church hurt, the kind that restores your spiritual receptivity rather than just making you a more refined version of numb, doesn't happen in a single prayer. It happens in the quiet, consistent decision to stay open to a signal you can't always feel but slowly learn to trust again. There will come a morning, not today, maybe not next week, when you sit with your hands open and something gets through. Not the way it did before, perhaps, but in a new way. A way that belongs to where you've been and where you're going. And in that moment you will understand something the numbness could never teach you. The Father didn't wait for you to find your way back. He was moving toward you the whole time.